Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 Fall 2020 Criminology Careers in Criminal Law and Criminal Justice panel. I'm hosting Professor Gore here. You all are well familiar with me at this point, so I won't even go into who I am. This is not what this is about. In front of you, you see three women who do great work in the area of criminal law in general, also in the social sciences. So I'm going to introduce them and then we'll get started with the questions, some of the questions that you all sent to my inbox and posted on the discussion board. So we're going to start with Ms. Guadalupe Trejo. So her formal title or her formal role is that of legal services coordinator. She's also an advocate in my eyes. She actually works as a legal services coordinator for Human Rights First. It's a refugee in the Refugee Representation Department in Los Angeles, California. She works closely with asylum seekers and she provides legal services and legal support to pro bono attorneys in the area. Guadalupe oversees all active cases, conducts initial screenings, completes detailed intakes and intake reporting for case placement. She is in the process of becoming an accredited representative to represent clients before the Department of Homeland Security, the Executive Office of Immigration Review as well. That's awesome. And prior to joining Human Rights First in Los Angeles, Guadalupe worked for the Capital Area Immigrants Rights Coalition in Washington, D.C. as the managing legal assistant. There, she provided direct services to unaccompanied children who were detained in ORR facilities and detention facilities throughout DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And she holds a bachelor's in political science and Spanish from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Wave for me really quickly, Guadalupe here. And do you want to, just for my purposes today, want to be referred to as Lupita or Guadalupe?
You could refer to me as Lupita or Guadalupe, whatever works.
Whatever works. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next up, we have Miss Brittany Mobley. Her formal title is that of Deputy Chief and Community Defender of the Community Defender Division of Juvenile Services Program for the Public Defender Service for Washington, D.C. And so she first joined the Juvenile Services Program for PDS, which stands for Public Defender Services, in July 2015 as a staff attorney. Prior to PDS, Brittany was a senior attorney at the Children's Law Center within their Guardian Ad Litem program representing children in the abuse and neglect system for about 4 years. Brittany joined the Children's Law Center immediately after graduating from Howard University School of Law. While at Howard Law, she worked as a student attorney in the Criminal Justice Clinic, representing adults in misdemeanor cases, and also as a law clerk for PDS, both in the Juvenile Services Program and the former Community Reentry Program. Currently, Brittany sits on the Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Mental Illness Advisory Council. She is the vice chair of the Juvenile Justice Committee of the American Bar Association, an advisory board member for the Mid-Atlantic Juvenile Defender Center, and she is the founding member of the National Secretary of the Black Public Defender Association. Everyone, welcome Ms. Brittany. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you so much.
We're so excited. And you were a part of our discussion last semester as well. So some of you might remember Lupita, and some of you might also remember Brittany. We have someone who is new to our criminology panels, but is not new to University of District of Columbia. We have here Miss Irene Jacobs. She is a clinical psychology doctoral student, a professor, and also a social science professor and advocate. Okay, and so a lot of students have a lot of questions for you, Miss Irene. I just want to warn you now. But to give those who may not be as familiar with Ms. Jacobs' work, she's a clinical psychology doctoral student at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. She is a graduate student affiliate of the Families and Mental Health Research Lab and a clinician within the VCU Primary Care Psychology Training Collaborative. Her broad research interests involve the social detriments and, I think I said that words, determinants. Am I right? Professors can be wrong sometimes.
Yeah,
Determinants?
Yeah, determinants.
Determinants. Thank you so much. Of her mental health and factors influencing the risk and resilience of urban youth. Her research examines and it also correlates the adverse childhood experiences in pediatric primary care populations. Prior to beginning her doctoral studies, Ms. Jacobs worked for the United States Department of Defense's Military Operational Medicine Research Program, contributing to the programmatic steering of psychological health and resilience portfolio. She has also assisted with research aimed at enhancing the psychological outcomes of marginalized youth at the University of Maryland College Park in the Comprehensive Assessment and Intervention Program and Georgetown, University. The African American Knowledge Optimized for Mindfully Healthy Adolescence Project. And if you've ever taken a class at the University of District of Columbia in the psychology department, you might have seen her in your transcript or maybe in your classroom or in your curriculum or banner as an adjunct professor of psychology, both there and also at the Montgomery Community College. So please welcome Miss soon-to-be Dr. Irene Jacobs.
Thank you for having me this evening. Very excited to be with you all.
We're excited to have each of you. I just want to say, students, before we start, that each of these women work today, and yet they made time to share their experiences. So make sure that you're engaged. We're going to get started with a general question. Ladies, some of these questions will be specific to each of you. Feel free to follow up if you have something to add. And we'll start with a general question for everyone, and whoever wants to go first can go first. So the first question that a student has is, what does a day look like for you in your work? And Ms. Jacobs, you're unmuted, so we'll start with you. How about that?
That's a really good question. Not to scare anyone away from the PhD life, but it's usually my day starts about 7 or 8 and goes until 7 or 8. It depends on the day. So as you move up in training, it's basically being a clinical psychology student. I'm doing a lot of heavy research development, so research and writing, but I also have to log clinical hours and provide services. So I'm juggling providing direct services to clients and their parents, charting, as well as literature review and the occasional class, and just committee meetings. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. I wear a lot of different hats in a workday, and usually end each day kind of writing, usually 1 to 4 patients a day, supervision meetings, and then again, writing.
Wow, lots of research and writing, but it looks like there's a bit of client interfacing, meaning you have time with clients, and you said 1 to 4, did I hear right? 1 to 4 people that you see in one given day.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you for your candid, for your candid spirit. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Since I was calling on people, I'll go ahead and do Miss Lupita next.
Hello, everyone. I was freaking out a little bit because I couldn't unmute myself, but I'm happy. My day is different every day, to be honest. So I think the best way to kind of walk you through my day is by maybe explaining what I did today. I just like to start my day with doing a bit of self-care. And I know that seems like weird and whatnot, but it's so important, especially when you work with asylum seekers and refugees. It's important to incorporate some type of self-care in your day. So this morning I woke up at 5 a.m. I went to a private training class with some weightlifting. And then I came back and drank my coffee and started my day by going through emails. After that, I went through my voicemail box to see what potential clients had called in for a legal consultation. Right now, Human Rights First Los Angeles is at capacity, so unfortunately we're not accepting any new cases. So what I'm doing at the moment is referring asylum seekers to other legal service providers within the area of Los Angeles. After that, I worked on a couple of employment authorization documents and did some research on how the administration is trying to work against asylum seekers to make sure everything's all right. And then I wrapped up my day by working on a declaration for a potential plaintiff for a lawsuit that Human Rights First is currently working on.
Wow. So your day, like Ms. Jacobs, involves not just client interfacing and client work and client meetings, but everything from work permits applications to research about policy. And I like that you said you started your day with some self-care, because I think we all could probably use that that tip, starting our day with something for ourselves. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Lupita. Okay, and last but not least, Brittany, how is your day?
Yeah, so I agree. Thanks, Lupita. That's a good reminder to practice self-care. It's so important, especially dealing with the current health pandemic we're all facing right now. It can be challenging. My no day looks the same as I'm sure all of you amazing women realize, and also deal with. But I will say, generally, in the time of COVID, my days look a lot like constantly checking emails, constantly taking phone calls. We do a lot of direct service work primarily. So in my position right now, we do a lot of, in pre-COVID, we would go to juvenile detention centers, meet young people addressing conditions of confinement issue, working with young people in the juvenile legal system who are what we call in the deeper end of the system. So young folks who are committed to a juvenile agency, who are monitored by a juvenile justice agency, and ensuring that their rights are protected and maintained, even though they're not actively attended. So a lot of our days pre-COVID was spending most of the day in the juvenile detention centers, which was pretty unique and interesting. And in COVID times, we're unable to do that, right? We don't want to inadvertently bring something into the detention center where young people are, have an opportunity to leave as freely as I would, right? So right now, with a lot of meetings, I sit and stare at a computer all day and do a lot of WebExes and Zooms and things like that. And doing a lot of client outreach by phone and via video communication. So it's interesting. I am very lucky that Irene and I give you all the kudos in the world for doing all of the amazing and fabulous research and writing that I know comes with getting your PhD. And I tip my hat to you, but I'm not spending too many hours a day doing that. That kind of comes in ways when we have to, in my current role.
Thank you. Wow, you all do so much just in one workday. It sounds like all of your roles kind of fit, and that's kind of what the class or my classes are wondering. If I'm a person who really doesn't want to meet or deal with people, is there a role for me? And for people who say, "Oh, I'm a people person. I want to talk to people. I want to see people. I want to see the manifestations of my work." Is there a role for me? And so it sounds like all three of your roles, the many hats that you wear, involve both, a little bit of both. You got to have the ability to handle. One question that a student asked is, why did you choose this career path? Why did you choose this career? And I know it sounds like all of us in this particular virtual room, while we have arrived as far as our careers, we're always advancing. We still seek certifications, trainings, CLEs. We never stop learning on the institutional sense. And so the question is, why did you choose this particular career path? And whoever wants to jump at this can, it's for everybody.
I'll go just to mix it up. I always knew ever since I was younger that I wanted to be a lawyer. Didn't have a lawyer in the family. I have no idea where that instinct came from, probably from watching TV, but I always had this idea in mind that I was going to be an attorney. And as I got a little bit older, and became a little bit more educated in things when I was in college, I said, I want to be a civil rights attorney. Now, if you pushed college age Brittany a bit more and said, well, what does that look like for you? She couldn't tell you what it exactly looked like, but she would be able to tell you that she wanted to be a civil rights attorney because she wanted to work on behalf of Black and brown people. And she wanted to ensure that Black and brown people were treated with dignity, respect, humanity. And but what exactly that looked like and how that would, how my path would be guided in that way, it wasn't exactly clear to me until I went to law school at Howard. And my first year, I was in a crim law class. And my professor, who became a mentor of mine, she's since passed on, Tamar Meekins, brilliant, wonderful woman. I remember sitting in her class with two other friends of mine, and we were just staring at this magnificent woman talk about criminal law and criminal defense and being a public defender. And it was literally like all of the puzzle pieces came together and fit so perfectly. And I remember we went to her class afterwards and went to her office hours rather, and then just said, we want to be you. Three of us. We were like, we want to be you. Like, this makes sense. And we all kind of had different journeys and different paths, but it was interesting that three little Black girls who went straight through from college, straight to law school, because we were still fairly young. We looked at this amazing woman and said, you make sense, right? You make all of this make sense. And that really is where it all started for me. As I continued through law school, it kind of narrowed more and more and more that for me, I really enjoyed working with younger people. And I worked with older folks too. When I was in law school, I did a clinic, which is basically, practicing law under the supervision of a licensed attorney. And I worked with adults in that context, but I still really just enjoyed working with younger people in the juvenile legal system. So I was very, very lucky that I've been able to make it this far in my career by being able to focus on this kind of age group. And people often say, why juveniles, right? Like, why this age group? Unfortunately, as all of us are aware, the system does not treat Black and brown people fairly or equally. And it's even more disheartening that children can't even get their fair shake of it, right? And if this country does not even consider and treat Black and brown children with dignity and humanity, then we're really at a loss. So it became just really important to me to start working with that age population and really fight on behalf of those young folks. And luckily, I can say that I love my job. I really love it. For people who are going to watch this, I really, really love the work that I do. And I haven't always been able to say that in my career, but I feel like this job for me just makes sense. And I'm so happy doing it. I love the work I do. I love my clients. I love working on behalf of, just amazing young folks in DC. So yeah, now I'll shut up.
Oh my gosh, no, I could listen to you talk for at least another 30 minutes because it's so refreshing to see someone say, I love my job. I love that I'm fighting for a marginalized, vulnerable community and still have the passion behind such advocacy. And also what I really want my students to really hone in on is the fact that Brittany didn't necessarily start her career or start her education knowing exactly what positions were out there that fit her interests. But what she did do was she continued to commit to her studies. And so just because the position may not even exist or the position isn't something that's within your peripheral right now, please, please, please make sure that you continue to figure out what triggers your passions and don't stop because you don't know what that position is or you feel like it's unattainable. And also the importance of mentorship. But we have talked about that in my class extensively. So we will circle back to that. But thank you so much for sharing. Irene or Lupita, whoever wants to go next. The question again is why have you chosen this career path?
Yes, wonderful. And so I would have to piggyback off Brittany because I, exactly for the same reason, but again, from a psychological lens, I'm very much concerned about our current legal system and society and how it treats young Black and Brown youth. And so we know that, for instance, that even a child that is as young as 10 or 11 is often tried as an adult in a court of law. The adultification of young people, the societal attributes that lead them, based on the built environment that lead children to more risk behaviors and, maladaptive development are from a societal level. So because I do believe in rehabilitation, true rehabilitation, I want to do this work. So my thing is, yes, I'm training to be a clinical psychologist. I'm training in within the medical model of health. However, I'm looking at it from a social justice lens. And so for me, it's making science equitable and accessible to marginalized populations. For instance, a lot of assessments that are used to to diagnose different behavioral problems have usually been normed on white children. And it's not, and a lot of these interventions are not culturally competent for Black or Brown populations or even urban populations. And so for me, I always wanted to help people, but I wanted to bridge my love for science and social justice within the field of psychology specific to developing youth. I think when I was in my graduate program at Pace University, my internship was at Rikers Island, and I had a lot of clients. I did a reentry class, and I had a lot of clients that had been recycling or recidivism, right? They had been engaging in recidivism for years and years and years. And I'm like, okay, so where is my point of intervention? Like, how can I engage people earlier on so that this is not part of their life trajectory? So that's why I'm specific to, older middle childhood to adolescent populations, and using that psychological lens to try to display that, hey, these are the circumstances in which a person has grown up in, and these are the reasons why we need to push more funding and more resources into communities.
That is amazing. Yes, snaps. I love that. It's so amazing that students can listen, because some students in my class, they really don't desire to necessarily be an attorney, or maybe they don't want to work as a police officer. Some students in my class are interested in some mental health aspect or social work. But I invite my students to think about, if you have this love for mental health, if you have this love or this passion for science, there's a way to turn that into social action. Another thing I want you all to focus on in what she said, and all of the amazing nuggets, was she said something called internships. And so I want all my students to understand that upon graduating, if you don't have an internship, it's time for you to think about one. It's time for you to figure out, what can I do between my summer of real life and starting to work? For students who are in here and you are in your first, second, third, whatever year, internships, they are key, because they gave Miss Irene here, soon to be Dr. Irene, a lens into what her motivating factor was. And so also, you all might have heard some terms in here we've been learning about: equity, recidivism, rehabilitation. All of those play key roles, as you all can see, as we go into the vocational side of criminal justice. So thank you for sharing. Ms. Lupita, it is your turn. We want to hear why you have chosen this career path, because you worked with youth in detention centers. You work with asylees as adults and refugees across the nation and therefore all over the world. So why did you choose this career path?
Yes, thanks, Courtney. So I want to echo what Brittany said. The system does not treat Black and Brown people with dignity and respect. And I realized that at a very young age, actually when I was about 8 years old, which is why I decided to do the work I do now. When I was 8 years old, both of my parents lost their jobs. Their employer found out that they were undocumented, They migrated to this country at a very young age, in fact, when they were about 17, 18 years old. Unaware of rights, they didn't adjust at the time, so they were undocumented. And we lost our home at the age of 8. I lost my room, we lost our cars, and I had to help my parents move out. And I didn't understand what was happening until my parents sat me down. They had to have that conversation with me that, you know, we are undocumented, we can get deported at any time, and you are going to have to take care of your siblings in case that happens. So that automatically fueled an anger in me, right? And rather than letting that affect me, what I ended up doing is using that anger to fuel my commitment to do more for my community, specifically for brown and black community members, because let's be real, they're the most affected. I became more hyper aware of this situation when I moved to Inglewood, California, which is where I was raised. And I witnessed many of my peers' parents get deported, and they were unaware of the rights of what they could do to slow down this process. They didn't know they could hire an attorney to represent them. So again, angry there, but decided to kind of steer that to the right direction. And it's ultimately what led me to decide to go to college and pursue my degree in political science, to understand the way the system works. I figured the system might work against my parents and those I love, but let me work with it to see in what ways we can alleviate this. So I made the biggest risk, and that was to move to DC right after I graduated, to work with Care Coalition to help represent children who were in office in refugee resettlement facilities. And I did that because I saw almost a reflection of myself in them, and I wanted to kind of help them and again use my passions to do that. And I say that carefully because I know that what they've gone through what I've gone through does not compare with what these children have gone through. But again, that's ultimately why personally I decided to do this line of work. And working with human rights first is the fact that I wanted to come back home, and I wanted to start working with adults and expand my knowledge in the legal field. So personally, that's why I decided to do that work. But also professionally, I decided to do this work because I realized that working with the immigrant population is something I'm good at. And I've heard this many of times. I'm not an attorney, but I've heard this from attorneys that you can go to law school, but there's certain skill sets that you will not be able to learn even in law school. And that's how to build rapport, build relationship with clients, and to successfully be able to execute your work, whether it's through a declaration, whether it's through intakes or screenings. So in doing this work, I realized that yes, this is something I continue to be passionate about, but two, it's something I'm good at and something I want to continue investing in.
Wow, thank you, Lupita. You got some snaps from some other panelists. You use your personal pain, your personal experiences to motivate change. And so I do have students in these classes who have emailed me their personal stories about what they're going through while trying to pursue their studies, and I admire them. I invite those students who, of course, are going through their own battles and facing their own battles. Some of you have close family and friends who have been incarcerated during this time. Some of you have friends and family members who reached out to me who said, listen, they're on the verge of deportation. What can I do here? Some of you have faced other personal strains. And of course, my response as a professor is, let's get you into the Office of Social Services and Therapy. But listen to what it is Ms. Lupita has shared. After you feel like you've healed personally, what can you do in your community to make sure that others or people in your community don't face those same travesties? What is it that you can do to make those changes? And so thank you for sharing both your personal story and motivations, because I know there are a lot of students in my class who are children of immigrants and who are also immigrants themselves, who wonder what they can do, especially after we have gone through a very interesting administration. I'll say nothing more. So with that being said, I move very quickly through that. Some students have kind of personal questions here. And so usually students, especially students who get bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorates, you know, we're so proud of them, but the reality is they are not free. And so students want to know, it's a double compound question. Please don't object, Miss Brittany here, but how many years of school did you attend? And if you have a lot of student debt and feel comfortable sharing, would you say that it was worth it, both the work and the loans? Whoever wants to go first can take the reins there.
I can go first. Only because it's kind of unique. So it's complicated is the first response. But basically when I was in undergrad, I'm like, whoa, wow, I went to school for free from K to 12 and now we have to pay for this. Whoa. So I worked really hard and got into the honors college, which supplemented my tuition. So that was a goal. I did not enter college as an honors college student, but I want you all to know that you can find funding. That is my thing. I tell people finding funding is always something that's super important. So undergrad, and I was able to supplement. So I did a dual BA/MA, and that was funded through the honors college. Now, my journey to a doctorate is also very interesting. I am very transparent about the fact that I applied to programs 3 times before getting in, but that was and I got into programs, but sometimes some higher ed and some like graduate degrees are like what we call degree mills. And so you kind of have to be careful about certain programs. But right now my PhD is fully funded through the university and I get a stipend in the form of different assistantships each year. So I would say that I have very low debt. But I was strategic and had to wait a little bit longer before the right educational opportunity became available. So there's a lot of things to consider when crafting your path. If you are creative and diligent, I think that, finding a low debt way is possible.
Thank you. You are so right in saying that you were diligent and looking at different programming and finding ways to fund your education. Can you share with us just really quickly, just a clarification question? One, how many years of schooling have you done? How many do you have left? And then what when you say be careful, right, of going to certain programs or certain schools? We're of course not naming names here, but what do you mean be careful, if you might elaborate there? Yeah.
Okay. So for my first 2 degrees, I did them in 5 years. For my current PhD program, I've done 2 years. I have 2.5 to 3 years left. So I will have done 10 years of schooling by the time that I'm done with it. Now that I'm processing that, that's a lot of school. But again, I took a break. I worked for 5 years and that was a wonderful experience. My break for 5 years led me to UDC, which, Ms. Gore mentioned a moment ago. So there's different ways to break up your education. What I mean by degree mills is there's a lot of, not a lot, but there are some graduate programs and PhD programs specifically that are like sometimes mainly like an online type of format and may have accreditation, which is one thing to always look for, may not. And they're very quick to let in a lot of students and may lure students with the prospect of funding, but it may not really fully pan out. And, this is something that I'm also a first gen student. And so this is something that I know a lot of first gen may not be aware of. Again, and you're in the search of an education and bettering yourself. So I think it's really important to know that, again, there are ways to fund for your education. So that, again, won't name schools, but just be aware.
Thank you so much for your transparency. And we wish you well in your next 2.5, 3 years. I mean, in the line of it all, you're at the very end. So go you. And again, ladies and gentlemen, the importance here is mentorship, because if you have a good mentor, they can tell you, this sounds like this might not be the best option for you, given this school's X, Y, and Z. This is, if you're a first generation college student, if you're a first generation, even if you're your first to get your associates, it is really, really important that before you take that next step to get another degree, you know what that school is offering and whether or not it's worth it to sign on the dotted line. So make sure we get some good mentors here. Maybe I'll get Miss Lupita and then Miss Brittany in that order. Okay. And the question, again, just for clarity, was how many schools did you attend? How many years of school did you attend? And if you do have school or student loan debt, was it worth it?
Yeah, so I completed 4.5 years at the University of California, Santa Barbara for my undergraduate degree, Bachelor's of Arts to be specific. I graduated with $12,000 in debt, and I feel like it was worth it. And this is just me being sneaky, right? But I feel like it was worth it because it could have been less. Honestly, I'm gonna blame myself. I could have managed my money better. But I was like looking at these loans that the school was offering me, and I'm like, hey, let's go party with this money, you know. And now as an adult, I kind of reflect on that, and that the loan was on me. But I don't necessarily regret it, and the reason why is because my credit is amazing right now, thanks to those loans. Because I created a good payment plan. I worked with whoever issued my loans and to set those payment plans, and I've been paying them monthly, and that's boosted up my credit immensely. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise almost. But my next goal is to go to law school. So now I'm a little scared because I know that's pretty pricey. So a big strategy of mine is to apply to a public interest program to see if they can give me some money and apply to scholarships, which, to be honest, was the mistake I made when going into undergrad, because I didn't know how to even look for scholarships. I didn't have proper mentorship. The school I went through did not really empower their students, to be honest, and provide that mentorship. So now I'm going to definitely apply to scholarships. But I think if you have a plan, if you know, like, hey, I'm going to get my degree and then get my master's and apply to scholarships, so long as you know that that's going to be eventually invested in something good, a good job, a good career, then I think it'll always be worth it.
Thank you so much, Lupita. One clarifying question too for you here. Some students here are in the paralegal program, and so they aspire to be legal services coordinators. They aspire to be legal assistants or paralegals in firms, nonprofits, or different law organizations. Would you say that most of the people around you, what is their educational background? Is it like yours, where everyone has a 4-year accredited university degree and then some vocational experience? What would you say is most people's educational background for legal services coordination? And sorry, this compound, but you also mentioned that you're going to be an accredited representative so that you can represent people in court as a legal services coordinator. Well, how many years does that take?
So for the accredited, to become an accredited representative, it's a process. You have to take like right now I'm signed up to start an e-learning course that starts in January, which is a 6-week intense course where I'm going to take quizzes and I'm going to have to sit on all these trainings on how to properly fill out applications as it relates to working with the immigrant population. So I don't know how much that is, to be honest, because they're paying for everything, including the courses. Yeah. So I'm not asking questions. I'm just kind of there to do the work, and it counts as work time for me. I made sure that that was going to happen, because if not, I was going to go crazy. But in terms of the educational background of the people I work with, it varies, to be honest. And I want to be respectful when I say this, but I did 4 years as an undergraduate, and I'm supervising people that have a master's, that are much older than me. And I think what it comes down to be honest, respectfully speaking, of course, it's going to come down to internships in the hands you shake. Because if you pursue an education but you're not working towards what you want to do, you're not involved with the community or involved in the field that you want to become involved in, I only take you so far. I'm not saying that that's not going to take you far, but internships I cannot emphasize like more, that are so important. And to be honest, that's something that I dedicated my time to doing, even when I was like a sophomore at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I was like going around. I remember like knocking on doors and saying like, hey, like, you don't know this yet, but you could use my help. Like, I could sit here and just shred paper. I just want to shadow you. Like, please give me that. And I got rejected many times, and then eventually somebody gave me the opportunity. And I feel like thanks to that, like, it allowed me to be this far in my career at this age. So it varies. Educational backgrounds vary, but I want to use this platform to emphasize, please get an internship if you haven't. Please work on projects if you haven't. Expand your knowledge. Do it for you now, and do it for you in the future.
I hope my students are listening, because you are getting all of these wonderful nuggets from these women. Just two things I want to highlight here. She, of course, said internships. You've heard it a lot, but it's very, very important, because your education will take you a certain amount, but internships and your work ethic will speak for you. The second thing that you might have noticed is that she said her job is paying for her continued education. And so making sure that you do a good job in your employment, possibly asking and seeing if supervisors or if your current or future jobs or places of employment offer some type of funding for your interested areas of education. So that's really important. Tapping into all of your resources and also internships. Okay, I know that's kind of difficult to navigate in COVID, but I'm still getting emails in my inbox saying, hey, do you know someone who's interested or know someone who can do this? And a lot of other professors get those emails too. And who do those emails get forwarded to? Students who are engaged in class and who are focused. So make sure you all pay attention to that part. Miss Brittany, we want to hear, how many years of education did you have to go through? And then if you do have student debt, would you say it was worth it?
Yeah, so I will just quickly say to the folks who are interested in being paralegals, let me tell you, I will absolutely answer your question, but I can't let one moment go by without doing a plug for how important and brilliant and amazing paralegals are. Our paralegal, her name is Kirsten in my division, and she literally works on cases and tells me what to do. I'm the attorney of record on a case. And I literally take direction from our paralegal. She's brilliant. The paralegals save lives in the legal system. So kudos to you all who are out there who are considering that. That is a really smart move, and you do important work. I like to be really, really transparent about the student loan, but I'm going to put that as a cliffhanger. And I pulled up how much debt I'm actually in right now. So I'll save that for the end. I was really, really lucky for undergrad. My parents couldn't pay for me to go to college. That wasn't something. But I was so incredibly, incredibly lucky that the company my father worked for, the owner of the company, was retiring, and he wanted to do a couple of good deeds upon retiring, and he paid for me to go to college. So I am incredibly blessed and lucky that I did not have that debt. But that also meant I was fairly ignorant as to what taking out debt meant. So I was like, oh, I'll go to law school. It'll be fine. Like it's money. You just pay it back later. When I have a job, it'll be fine. But I knew, again, I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. That's public interest work. I knew I wasn't going to go to a big law firm making, tons and tons of money like that. That was never what was in the cards for me. And that's not where I was driven or my heart was. But again, this idea of taking out loans really just was this idea of, oh, it'll be okay. So I took out loans so college is 4 years, law school is 3 years. And I took out 3 years worth of student loans for law school. And I graduated law school in 2011. And I paid regularly, on time, consistently for now almost 10 years. And I will read you the exact number of how much debt I am currently. Well, I would and it just logged me out because I had it up too long. But it is, I can't give you the exact to the second half, but it is $216,000, et cetera. Over $200,000 in debt I am right now. And is it worth it? I love my job. So yes. And I think you have to, I was really lucky that again, I was really just lucky that the way things kind of shook out for me. I always knew I wanted to do public interest stuff. When I was in law school, I learned about this public service loan forgiveness program. Um, Prayerfully, that program will continue to exist for the next couple of years. And if you pay consistently for 10 years and you are 10 years consistently in public service, your loans will be forgiven. I've had a couple of times in there where I've deferred for a couple of months, and that's completely my fault because I was late to submit renewal paperwork, so I deferred. So even though I'm coming up on 10 years of practice, I'll probably have like an extra year I'd have to pay, but that's okay because it's still again, if the program continues to exist, my loans will be forgiven. So I encourage you all to look into those things. I encourage you all to really think about this ahead of time and do the research. So like Lupita said, right? Like looking into scholarships, like doing the hard work and, thinking about it on the front end and rather than on the back end when it's too late. Look into now, like what programs are available to me. Are there any scholarships or grant I can apply for, and make it your business, like a second job to apply for everything you can. Because I'm wishing and praying that this student loan, this public service loan forgiveness will continue to exist in a couple of years. But if not, right, then I'm over $200,000 in debt. With all of that being said, is it worth it? Yes, I absolutely love my job. I absolutely love the work that I do. And it makes me happy to do this work. So if I have now an extra monthly bill and I'm able to budget and manage, it's worth it to me.
Thank you so much for being so candid, because oftentimes people skirt around this conversation when it comes to education. We hear people promote all the time about getting more degrees, but the reality is there is a sacrifice. I myself, Brittany, am on that public service loan forgiveness, and I will say that I went into it fully aware because of a panel that I went to, kind of like this one, where a woman sat in front of me and said, she was an attorney practicing corporate law. She said she was $300,000 in debt, but her life is not significantly changed because she just pays it like another bill every month, and she's able to afford all the luxury she likes, and she has a payment plan that works for her and her husband and her dog. I think it was. She was very proud of her dog. And so, students, I hope you have heard what Brittany said. Just looking into the programs for forgiveness. If scholarships are not something that you have the time to do, and you're in your last year and you've already been accepted to a program, make it your business to be on top of that. But if that's not something that you can do, or you are not successful in that, make it your business to find forgiveness programs that make sense and align with what it is you want to do. Because you can have protection on both ends. One, preventative, making sure you don't go into debt by getting scholarships, grants, and other types of funding. And then on the other side, which includes forgiveness programs. And there are some of them for some random things, but the most popular ones come in the form of public interest. And when we say public interest, usually it means government work that's based in nonprofit, work that's based in some type of a moral work, some type of 501c3 based work. Okay. And so consider those. We are going to ask some questions about challenges. I know we're coming up on time. I'm wondering if people can go 5 minutes over, if that's okay. Okay, great. So these are questions that were directed at each person given their profession. And so I think I'd like to start this time with Lupita. The question that a student wanted to know for you was, how is it that you handle high caseloads, and how do you know which one to prioritize when you're given a high amount of cases? And we also heard when you started the panel that your job right now is at capacity. You all can't take any more cases right now. How is it that you prioritize and handle high caseloads?
Honestly, I'm going to sound like a huge nerd, but I just have to organize every assignment that's given to me. It's just something I've done and continue to do. I have this Excel sheet. Sometimes I don't get to fill it out, but I try to update it as much as I can of every assignment given to me. And it includes who assigned it to me, what the deadline is, and what the expectations are for me. And to be honest, the biggest method I used when to handle a caseload is not only being super organized, but also knowing what to delegate and who to delegate to. And that works in my favor because it frees up my capacity. But I'm also doing a service to those I supervise, whether it's another legal services coordinator or an intern who is eager to jump on work for that learning experience. So that's the way I kind of manage that caseload, and that's not always easy because it entails thorough training and being able to shadow those that are doing this work to make sure that they're doing the work the way they should, but they're also practicing trauma-informed care when speaking to clients. But with time, I'm happy to report that with the interns I have now, they've interned with the department for about 5 months now, and they've passed that training phase. So now I'm just delegating work to them, which is amazing. And then how I prioritize, honestly, it's going to come down to deadlines, but also being self-aware. I think that, and this is just me being honest, I think that in me being an organized person, sometimes I tend to be a little hard on myself. And I'm like, that wasn't done correctly. Or like, I'll read in between the lines when a supervisor sends me feedback. And they're like, oh my gosh, you didn't say I did a great job. And then I have to be self-aware. Like, I'm like, Lupita, you need to step back and know that if you're checking off the boxes and you're doing your work, that alone is enough. You're not always going to get a thumbs up. You're always you're sometimes going to get constructive feedback. So being open to that for me to be able to continue to manage this caseload is honestly the best method I've used. And so honestly, it's something I'm working on. I think the biggest thing in growing in this position is recognizing that growth is never ending. So just acknowledging that alone helps me get through my day.
You gave me some good advice because criticism, every time I see a red pin on something, I'm like, take it personal, and you can't do that. And so it's always a everyday thing. But thank you for sharing that. I think that's important. Soon to be Dr. Jacobs, a student asked, we do have a lot of police officers or people who aspire to be police officers. In fact, a lot of people are police cadets in our program. And so one student wants to know, do you believe that people that work in law enforcement, specifically police officers, should be forced or should require therapy based on everything we have to deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think that that's a wonderful question. I would say, regardless of career paths, I think that everyone could benefit from checking in with a therapist at one point or another. However, we do know that certain career paths, such as being a police officer, might lead to just more stress, especially if you're MPD, you're working in a city, there's just a lot more, it's a lot different than in other places. I definitely think that a model of care that involves, like, again, mandatory or at least optional check-ins and for it to be paid for by departments for counseling or therapy would be a great way to one, normalize therapy, right? Because again, it's just about prevention sometimes, as it is maybe addressing specific stressors or distress in a person's life. But it can also promote an understanding of the whole human, right? You may put on a uniform, but what are you facing before you put on the uniform? What have you faced with the uniform on? So I would 100% agree that I think that should definitely be part of, in addition to also, which I know for certain districts, but also just like basic understanding of some of the social work tenets, as well as counseling as part of formal training as well.
Thank you for sharing that. We always want to push self-care when it comes to our up and coming police officers for the MPD, but this particular student wants to know what is it that she can do as a future officer within her program entering the academy. So she has a future doctor's backing and what it is she has to say, right? Ms. Brittany, and we'll roll around too with another round of case specific or person specific questions, but how do you feel when people say that public defenders are known not to put they're best into cases, that if you have a criminal case, you should probably get a criminal defense attorney or pay for one. What do you say to those people?
So selfishly, I always start out in DC. I know that, let me back up. I know that is a stigma. A lot of people say, public defenders aren't real lawyers, paid lawyer instead. I will put a shameless plug and say that the Public Defender Service of DC, the agency I work for, we are a premier public defender agency, right? In the legal world, and folks who are interested in doing public defense, a lot of people, our office is highly known for its trainings, great results for clients, and we've got a lot of funding because we are federally funded. So we've got a lot of funding to do a lot of work on cases. So just an example may be that some court appointed attorneys, right, may be private attorneys that are appointed by the court for somebody who may not be able to pay for an attorney that doesn't work with the public defender service, right? So that person doesn't have, if they need an evaluation done, right, for a young person, they have to submit a request to the court to pay for a private evaluation to be done to aid in their case. Our office is lucky, right? We're really lucky and fortunate that we don't have to request that from the court. We don't have to request a voucher for the court to agree to pay for somebody. We have funding and it comes directly from our budget. So we can select, we have a broader range of experts, for example, that we can request from. So that's just one thing. And that's, I'll selfishly say that for PDS. PDS, we have some amazing attorneys in our office. We just really, really do. But to speak on that stigma for public defenders, I think not all public defender offices in the country are like PDS, right? Not all public defenders have federal dollars coming in, and a lot of them deal with the stress of underfunded offices that they can do all of these amazing things for people who deserve the best representation, even if money can't buy that, right? And that goes to just the larger issue as to why this country does not put more money and backing into public defender offices, because that in itself is a statement that they don't value people who are accused of crimes in the same way, right? Prosecutor offices are incredibly funded, especially in comparison to public defender offices in the country. So that's one thing. But I'll also just say, it is a stigma. It's unfortunate. I think you'll get folks who do private defense who will say, I do these cases. Yes, you can pay me for this. I have a good friend of mine is a private defense attorney, and she will regularly tell folks, don't spend the money on me, right? And she is amazing, phenomenal. She came from PDS, so she's got the training, she's got the backing, right? But she will tell people, don't take a second mortgage out on your house just to pay for a private attorney, because the attorney you have been appointed is damn good. Is good. Is good. Sorry. Is good. And, don't put yourself in this, even go into debt because of the stigma, right? And she'll tell folks that, not every attorney is great. And I think that's fair to say, right? Not every police officer is good, right? We're fully aware. And that's every field you're in. Not everybody's going to do their job the best way. But I will say it's a very unfortunate stigma. I know amazing public defenders who work their behinds off for clients because they know the importance of this work and who are fighting every day against that stigma. I work around the clock. I work on weekends. Technically, today was supposed to be a day off, but I worked all day. You know what I mean? Because I know this is important work. So I encourage folks to please push past that stigma and, look at everybody individually rather than public defenders are bad and you're better with a paid attorney, because that truly just is not always the case. And I think a lot of people do themselves a disservice by buying into that stigma.
I mean, well said. Thank you so much for that. And then, because a lot of students here who might be interested in interning with PDS, that's important to know the resources that you have right in your backyard, not only for legal representation, but also to get get an eye as to how this all works. So thank you for that. That's a wonderful answer, and I hope everyone here is listening. We have about 4 minutes, so I know you all are ready to enjoy your Turkey Day vacation. If you could keep your answers a little brief for this round, but students do want to know these answers. So I'll do Dr. Irene for the next question. And I know this is hard to answer, but how do you tackle someone, and not literally physically tackle someone, but how do you tackle someone who displays symptoms of multiple illnesses? How do you help someone who refuses to take any type of therapy or medication seriously?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Noncompliance is something that does occur in younger patients or populations and older. I think that leaning on the support of like whatever the person's support system is like is something that is a tool. But also I think in terms of a treatment, from a treatment perspective, whatever is causing the most impairment is what I would mainly focus on first. And usually with that, you're able to bring a little bit more equilibrium and then can tackle the other things. So being strategic about working with the person support system to help with engagement, and also just being strategic about what's the most important, like what's causing the most impairment. Is something not great, but really just personally affecting them, or is it something that's globally causing a distress or impairment in their life?
Thank you so much. You wrapped that up. That's amazing, but it's extremely clear. So thank you so much for that. So the next question is for Brittany. In our lightning round, why? I don't know if this is possible to answer quickly. Why would an attorney represent someone they know is guilty?
I'm gonna do this quick. Because how do you know somebody is guilty? It is the government's burden to prove guilt. And that is so important because this country has a history of caging and imprisoning, enslaving Black and brown people wrongfully. So the system is not fair. This system has been built on white supremacy and systemic racism against Black and brown bodies. So I do it to fight against that abhorrent system.
There we go. I mean, you all are mastering this art of like concise words and delivery, but that's your answer, students who have there. We had 3 students who submitted a question that was similar to that. What happens when you know someone is guilty? How do you represent them? Someone here from the paralegal program, Lupita, asked, do you ever, because they realize that you will be able to represent people in immigration court and speak on your own. Are you nervous about doing so? If so, how do you calm your nerves?
I am nervous. I feel like anybody would be nervous, but I think what caused my nerves is knowing that I've gone to court to serve as friend of court in the past to kind of express children's wishes who were in or detention. So knowing that, just kind of knowing that I've gone before a judge, I know what I sound like out loud with an interpreter there. Just kind of calms my nerves, but also kind of preparing and asking a million questions. Like I'm not going to shy away from asking the necessary amount of questions I need in order for me to properly represent a client in court in the future. And if I could just say one last thing, Courtney, I just want to let all your students know that Human Rights First is currently accepting internship applications. So go on our website and check us out. We have an office based in DC. We also have another one in New York, and then another one, of course, in Los Angeles. Los Angeles isn't accepting internship applications at the moment, but I know DC and New York are. But we will be accepting internship applications sometime around spring if you're looking for a summer internship. And it is remote because of COVID.
That was my next question. You are effortlessly moving through my final question for everyone. Internship opportunities. So for those who are wondering where to go, it's hrf.org. hrf.org. Make sure you visit that website and see internship opportunities for the spring. Is that right? For the spring?
It's actually humanrightsfirst.org, Courtney.
Human Rights First.
New York, yeah, humanrightsfirst.org, and New York and DC, I believe, are accepting internship applications. It's just LA that's not accepting them until spring for summer internship opportunities.
All right, students. So Washington, D.C. is accepting applications for their internship program, humanrightsfirst.org. I can issue this email or put the website when we come back from the holidays, so don't worry about that. But you all see internships, they're very, very important. We can ask Miss Irene and Miss Brittany in that order. Because the last question that somebody had was, are there internship opportunities for young adults in your field or in your office?
Yes, I think that a really good start is just looking up community-based organizations and seeing what internships they have specific to child and adolescent mental health. Looking up APA Division 53. That is a division of APA that they have a lot of listings, a very active listings where they do post internship opportunities, paid clinical research coordinator opportunities as well. So I would say an APA Division 53 is a really good resource generally for my psychology.
Thank you so much, Irene. And then Miss Brittany for PDS.
Yes, so go to PDSDC for Public Defender Service District Columbia.org, PDSDC.org, and there's a tab that says join our team, I think. And there is a link on there for the criminal internship program. And that is a program for folks to apply to, and you would be an investigative intern. So you would be working on cases, investigating cases with other investigators in the offices, working for attorneys, helping build the defense case. So they're really fabulous, amazing opportunities. And I don't know if this is an exact statistic, but most of the staff investigators in the office started as an internship and then, came on as full-time investigators later. And I'll say for myself, I was an intern when I was in law school for PDS, and now I have a position at PDS. So PDSDC.org, intern, mentor, get mentors.
Absolutely. I will say this before we close this evening. Students, don't submit your resume, don't submit a cover letter until you see someone, a professor or career services, who will look through everything. You want to make sure you have the proper eye and that you've included everything you need to. So look up these internships, Google them, put everything together and bring it to a professor or bring it to the career services to look over both the career description and also to look over your resume and cover letter. That's what your tuition is paying for. Finally, I want to thank each of you so much for donating and being so generous with your time, your advice, your life skills. I know that it is not 10 minutes over time, and every time or moment is precious, but I appreciate it. Students, I want to say that this right here is the dialogue that people need to have a little bit more of, but you can look them up on LinkedIn. I know we're all going to learn a little bit more about that in class to see how they set up their professional profiles. We can talk about this more in class. It's important that you do not reach out to them until you have a talk to me so we can talk through professional development and how we do professional communication. Okay, so ladies, unless you have any parting words, we're going to close. I know, Lupita, you had some closing words, but did you have anything else?
No, I just want to thank you all and thank you, Courtney, for making it possible. It takes really good professors and leaders to do that. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Oh, please. Thank you all for your time. Brittany or Irene, any thoughts as well?
Yeah, thank you for bridging me into this conversation. I always love to bring a different perspective, and I'm really grateful to be able to have this for the students and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Yes, and hopefully you'll come back to UDC with your doctorate and teach a psychology class. How about that? That would be great. Brittany, your closing thoughts?
I'll just say you all are going to do wonderful because you have an amazing professor here that has taken so much time to reach out to everybody and make sure that you all have connections. Like Lupita said earlier, connections really are key and very important. And I will quite frankly say a lot of my career opportunities have been because of networking and connecting with people and mentorship. So thank you all. I'm so blessed and amazed to even be in the presence of you three. You all are wonderful and so impressive. And I was more than happy to spend my evening with you all.
Gosh, my heart is full. Thank you all so much. Students, thank you all. And I'll see you all post your, or actually on November 30th, we'll start resuming all of our different classes. All right. Thank you.